Welcome in to another episode of the Otson Audibles podcast. Eerik, Skopil, Matt Prehm here. Had very different experiences in what was maybe one of the great Oregon wins of my lifetime, at least the parts I caught from my sister's wedding. Matt's going to do a lot more of the breakdown because he saw a lot more of the game than I did. Buddy of mine had my cousin, I should say, had his phone out, and we were able to watch overtime together, along with a lot of Duck fans, a lot of excitement at the wedding once the speeches were done. But I'm kind of fuzzy on a lot of the game, and I'll just like you guys, I'll be learning kind of some of the things that happened, what made this one interesting. Matt, just kind of initial reactions. What's been kind of your big takeaways? And I'm coming in kind of dark here, so I'm going to be interviewing you with a lot of curiosity.
Yeah, I think this is going to go down probably as one of, if not the biggest regular season win in at least the modern era of Oregon football, maybe more than Ohio State last season in Eugene. Wow. Just because that was at home. They had the support of the fan base. They were playing in their friendly confines. Everything was normal for them. This was different. This was cross country. This was against an opponent that was a number 3 team in the country. I think this is the second time now they've won on the road against the number 3 team in the country, which most recently was at Ohio State on September 11th of 2021. This is the program's 8th win in program history over a top 3 opponent overall. This is going to be a signature win for Dan Lanning too. We talked about it a little bit. I felt like at media day, maybe before Wednesday's press conference with Lanning, of what is his signature win in really anything, because he had the Penn State game last year in the Big Ten championship game, and that was kind of the moment. That was the signature win. You could maybe point to Utah and
you mean away from Otson?
You can. Ohio State at Otson. That's another one. I think maybe it's away from home where has this team really performed at a really, really big stage away from home, and this becomes that moment. And I felt like Lanning out coached Franklin. I thought Oregon's defense was tremendous. Penn State had 251 yards of total offense. They held Drew Aller to under 150 yards passing. They had an interception to win the game. They dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides. Oregon didn't give up a sack in this game. They got to Drew Aller a couple times. This was a game I felt like the score was not reflective of how wide these two teams played. Quite frankly, Penn State was lucky that it was only a 14-point score or 14-point lead by Oregon early in the fourth quarter. It should have been more. Had Oregon executed correctly on some drives. You could argue, well, that's if, woulda, shouldas, and Penn State, they would maybe executed a little bit better, but they had 109 yards going into the fourth quarter. 109 yards. That's not a woulda, coulda, shoulda moment. That was your offense was stuck, and Oregon had more than doubled you up offensively and just wasn't capitalizing, wasn't finishing off drives. And if they had converted, just even if Atticus Sappington made that long field goal in the early in the first half, this game never went to overtime. I don't know. I'm walking away really, really impressed. This was a grow-up moment for the program, grow-up moment for a lot of young Ducks that we've been curious, how good is this team? And I think we've learned they're pretty damn good.
Yeah, I was, the parts, again, I caught. And I will say, we had a phone at our table. My cousin and I were watching kind of intermittently. We missed big chunks here. But I was impressed by the newcomers and the younger players and their moments. Like, we should spend a lot of time talking about Dante Moore on this podcast. We should talk about De'Aaron Hill and Jordan Davison having their moments, getting into the end zone in big spots. DeCorian Moore having some huge catches. Dylan Thieneman, the transfer, icing it with the interception, which is going to go down as I don't know, Matt, tell me 5 better defensive plays Oregon players have made in our lifetimes. And I don't know if this is on the list. This is on the short list of best kind of moments from a defensive perspective I can think of. To close a game was a heck of a play. I mean, I've seen it all over the social media. I have been able to see just the elevation and the way he was able to bring that down. That's not a usual play. And if he doesn't make it, there's a player running down the sideline, it seemed like to me from the one vantage point I caught.
Yeah, I mean, I think the signature defensive play that comes to mind obviously is the pick
Sure.
against Washington. Next one, probably Tony Washington scoop and score over Jameis Winston in the Rose Bowl.
Yep, that one came to mind too.
After that, this is going to be up there. This is going to be a moment. Now, granted, some of this stuff with how Oregon played and how well they looked, or how well they played, the Thieneman interception, the lore that will come with it, largely depends on what happens next for both Oregon and for Penn State as well. But if Oregon continues to have the season that they should have, and I put this on the instant reactions, not to get away from your question, but we should start very quietly talking 12-0, because this was the game that you and I both said at the beginning of the year they were going to lose one. This looked like the game they were most likely going to lose. We felt like every other game Oregon probably is going to be favored to win. I think that's going to hold true, barring any kind of crazy freak injury or something crazy with the roster. But they passed their biggest test. And now find Oregon's next toughest game at Iowa in early November.
Next game against Indiana?
Yeah, I was going to say 2 weeks at home against Indiana. USC in late November, at Washington in late November. All those games, I'm not going to say they're not going to be cakewalks. They're not going to be super easy for Oregon to win, but they should be favored. And that Dylan Thieneman interceptions has sealed the fate for this discussion to happen now of how good could this team be? Could this team truly rattle off 18 straight Big Ten wins in 2 years to open Big Ten play? A lot of football left to be played, but we can now start quietly talking about that kind of conversation. And that's because of what you just talked about, the Dylan Thieneman interception. Monumental play by a transfer that I think you brought up maybe the last couple podcasts, one of the last ones, that he's played well, but we've still been waiting for that moment for Dylan Thieneman to have a breakout performance, to have a breakout play, to have a signature moment. And we got that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of continue what you were talking about, you look at college football today, like I'm going to be really interested to see where kind of they are in the AP poll. They have a case to be one. I have a case to be at least two. I think I would be really surprised. I mean, 3, 4, and 5 lost today. This is as good of a win as anybody in college football has. I think it's the best when you consider venue and kind of the way it went down. It was defensive, like you said, it was as impressive as anything I've seen. We should spend some time talking about this, and I'll let you kind of handle a lot of that. But like Oregon's making a case, you mentioned it to maybe run the table, but like also like to solidify themselves as like, we talked about this coming in, like there were some question marks about whether this was going to be a year where they took some lumps early. They have a case to be the very best team in the country, and I wouldn't be surprised at all on Sunday if they leap over Ohio State. I also wouldn't be surprised if they're 2, but like looks like one of the best teams in the country, one of the best wins, absolutely. And like the line of scrimmage play, like again, from what I caught, really stood out for this entire game until I think the fourth quarter. Some of the defense got worn out, and credit to Penn State for just continuing to kind of hammer them going forward on fourth, and just relying on that backfield and that offensive line to move the Ducks a little bit. But really impressive defensive effort. And we had a thread on our board about like Tosh Lupoy and whether or not he belongs. Like, this is your game.
Like, can we stop? Why are people like? We needed to address that. But the people that are coming out here saying Tosh Lupoy sucks, like, what more do you want from a defensive coordinator? They had 17 points in regulation. They finished the game with, in overtime, 2 overtimes, 276 yards of total offense. They averaged 4.6 yards per play. They were 6 of 15 on third downs. They only had 15 total first downs in the entire game. They were completing less than 10 yards per completion. Like, this was not a game in which you could sit here and say Tosh Lupoy is bad, garbage, get him out of here. Like, Oregon's defense made what was supposed to be – look, I didn't believe the Drew Aller hype going into the season, but a lot of people did. And a lot of people that get paid millions of dollars believed the hype. And you can't sit here and tell me that this guy isn't an NFL prospect. They have 2 NFL dudes at receiver. They've got multiple guys along the offensive line that are going to get drafted. They have receivers that are talented. They have a dynamic tight end too this season. And Oregon's defense, with 1 or 2 returning starters from last year's unit, a bunch of young freshmen, a bunch of guys playing football together for the first time, whether it's in college for their first few games or their first year at Oregon. And we talked about this before the season started, or maybe a couple of weeks in. Is this defense going to be better than the 2024 defense? Yes, they are. They are better. And we talked about Bear Alexander. Yes. Where is he going to have his moment? He was dynamite tonight. He was unbelievable. Amari Washington continues to just flash. Looks like a future first-round draft pick. I think we obviously knew about Mateo Youngale and his abilities to be a first-round pick. I think we need to start talking about Tatum Tuioti being a third-year junior that goes to the NFL after this season. He's going to get his name called if he wants to do that. Bryce Betcher's going to get his name called if he wants to do that. Dylan Thinneman will get his name called if he wants to do that. This defense is loaded, and I think what's scary about it is I don't feel like they've even come close yet to their tapping their full potential of what they could be this season. And their front 7 dominated the line of scrimmage. They were the more physical team. They were the one that set the tone. And yes, at the end of the game, Penn State had the momentum. Oregon kind of got caught with a long drive that was sustained for like 6 or 7 minutes for a score. Oregon's offense went out and basically went 3 and out because of a really dumb, boneheaded play by Alex Harkey for a personal foul penalty. And then they had to go right back out there and try and hold them. And they basically did what they were supposed to do. Drive the length of the field. If you're going to score, you're going to go all the way. You're not going to get an explosion play. And they did that and scored the second touchdown to come back and complete the comeback for the tie. But you eliminate those 2 drives, and this game, it's like Penn State had 140 yards of total offense until the last 2 drives of regulation. It still happened, but come on, like this defense is elite. They're better than last year's team.
Yeah, aside from the long touchdown pass, which I did catch, and I was a heck of a route, heck of a throw. I had a couple moments that were impressive, but I totally agree in terms of just the totality. That was the only play over 20 yards in this game for Penn State. That probably doesn't surprise you to hear that if you're listening, if you watch the game. It was not a game where there was a whole lot of explosive plays for the Nittany Lions. And, hey, I hit my Bryce Betcher 12 tackles, by the way. And I will –
Very high, 12 tackles.
I will eat my crow on the outcome here. Not that it means a whole lot. I don't think people care too much right now considering the outcome. But, hey, this Oregon team, I was wondering if they were going to be able to go into an environment like this and stack up. And boy, did they. And like you said, Matt, I felt like when it was 17-3 in that fourth quarter that this team had completely arrived. And yes, they had a couple of sequences defensively that weren't perfect. The offense didn't do it any favors. They had an opportunity to maybe put a foot down and make sure this game didn't go to overtime. But just credit to these guys for keeping it going. And really, let's do the Dante Moore part now. Credit to him for leading this offense, for making some NFL throws, for being undoubtedly the most impressive quarterback in this game, for – I think, and I know Dan Lanning seems to agree with this, kind of throwing his name right to the top of the Heisman Trophy candidate list with, I know the stats aren't going to leap off. No, he didn't get the 305 yards, but 29 for 39, 248, 3 touchdowns, ran the ball quite a bit with a lot of effectiveness, 10 for 35, some scrambles, some more designed runs. He was sliding, I saw, Matt. I saw at least one slide. Maybe had more than that, you can tell me. This was a complete package from a guy, and I will say I was texting with some friends who knew I wasn't going to be able to watch the game, and just like what your big takeaways were. And one of them said, like, Dante Moore is quickly ascending to the very top of my quarterback list. And not that he is, solidified as the top guy or even the top 2 or 3 guys, because there's been some awesome guys. But my buddy was basically like, it's hard not to feel like this is one of the great Oregon quarterbacks. And again, you're 5 games into a season, 5 games into his career as an Oregon quarterback. And there's no question this was his moment this year, probably going to be more. But what were your takeaways from Dante? Because from what I saw, it was pretty spectacular at times.
He outperformed Drew Aller. I don't think that was even a question. It was very clear he was the better quarterback on the field in this game. Even when Penn State finally decided to open up their offense, the only thing that Drew Aller did better than Dante Moore was make heroic throws, and that was because they had to happen more often with him. But the throw to Gary Bryant Jr. in overtime to get a first down was absolutely tremendous. He looked to his left to throw a screenplay, and Dan Lanning said like that play was blown up. It was he had the command of the offense and the calmness, which goes back to what Kenyon Sadiq and Poncho said this week, that he is by far the calmest, coolest cat that they've played with at the quarterback position. Dante Moore saw the screenplay wasn't going to be there. He went the other direction, avoided a sack, and found Gary Bryant Jr. wide open for a throw that he had to layer it over the defender. Perfectly placed ball for a first down. 4 plays later, the Ducks score a touchdown. I thought a scramble to Dante Moore, like a back shoulder throw, was huge. He had another one to Gary Bryant for the touchdown. In the second overtime on the first play of possession was a really unbelievable throw. He made NFL throws today. He had a Kenyon Sadiq one, rolling to the right, throwing to his left to avoid pressure, found him wide open. I was a little hesitant a couple weeks ago when we started hearing like Dante Moore, first-round draft pick quarterback, kind of thinking small sample size. We don't see, third-year quarterbacks go all that often. And they don't have a ton of success when they're in their third year. They haven't played 4 years of college ball, whether it's a redshirt year or all 4. But man, Eerik, it's hard to argue. I mean, he's calm. He doesn't. It's like his heart rate is just 0. Like it doesn't move at all. He's unflappable. Nothing seems to faze him. I think his answers in media questions are always well thought out. Very insightful dude. He's got an opportunity. Really, quite honestly, it just depends on how long he stays at Oregon to really cement his legacy in the hierarchy of Oregon quarterbacks. And that maybe sound like super drunk off Kool-Aid moment right now, but he's really good. And he's a better quarterback than Dylan Gabriel. And I think he's got an opportunity to say he's a better quarterback than Bo Nix if he stays long enough.
This is a very bizarre part of the day, but I haven't told you this, Matt. My Uber driver earlier was one of Dante Moore's cousins. And
that is extremely random.
Very random. I don't know. I got in the car and I was talking. I was telling him what was going on, and he asked if I was checking out the game. And you wouldn't believe this. I'd actually be at the game if my sister wasn't getting married. And I told him, and I did ask him, like, do you think we think Dante this is last year? And this is of course before today. And he goes, oh no, that he's gonna need one more year, I think, to prove himself. So that was the vibe check I had pregame. I don't know if that's still the case after a game like this. And he also said like 3 or 4 weeks from now, he might have a totally different opinion. It wouldn't be surprised to me at all, but like, because this was, to me, just how gutsy he was. And like, I wasn't surprised, I guess, that he was going to have some success. It was just the number of throws that you like, and you ran through a lot of them, just that he made that were timely, that needed to happen. Like, yeah, he's solidifying himself. And I think you now feel like that there's that trust, right? Because that was the thing going in for me, was like, he's faced basically nothing in terms of the opponent to this point. And it was really hard to know, like, how is he going to fare when everything was on the line? And if you make a mistake, you might lose. And that was what he was faced with today, especially in that overtime. And to make the throws he did, the gutsy runs he made, putting it all on the line. Like, I just think he checks so many boxes. And again, there were some moments that weren't exactly perfect, missed a couple throws, and that I saw at least. But gosh, you have to feel really, really good. And you look around the sport this year, I don't know if I've seen a quarterback that's like decidedly, better. And I think that puts Oregon in a spot here to be really special as we kind of get through this season. I wanted to touch on another thing, Matt, that you kind of touched on and was kind of one of your big reasons for going Oregon here. And that was kind of Riverboat Gambler Dan, who seemed like every time I was looking up, they were going for it on fourth. A couple times it didn't work. I think they went for it 7 times. It would have been 8 if not for the Jamari Johnson false start, which I did catch I think that was the first quarter. He went all out. He took the risks when he needed to. They had when they took their 17-3 lead, that was a 4th and 1 play where, hey, you could have brought out Atticus, made it a 13-3 game. No, he wasn't going to go out that way. And there's been moments obviously in the past where that aggressiveness has not worked out for Oregon. I think you see why that's the approach to take in these big moments.
Penn State punted at Oregon's 36-yard line. They go for it on 4th down, or they attempt an extremely long field goal, which, by the way, their kicker nailed easily, like a 49-yarder or whatever. Why they did, the game's not in overtime. They win. Yeah. Instead, they punted at Oregon's 36. And look, Dan has said it multiple times. Like, when he wins on those downs, he's called a genius. When he fails on those tries, he's ridiculed for it, and he understands that the heat that comes with those decisions when they fail. But this is why you do it, because you extend drives, you extend plays, you put yourself in scoring position. And I felt like, honestly, like when he kicked the field goal and missed, when he kicked the field goal for 3 points, I was kind of like, go for it. You've already shown the reasons and the willingness to go for it earlier. Keep going. Be aggressive. And I also think a lot of that decision to go for it on 4th down was rooted in the idea that they knew Penn State couldn't effectively move the ball. And he was willing, theme of the year is double down, right? He was willing to double down on his defense in this matchup and say, I'm full confidence belief that we as an Oregon, Dan Lanning speaking, that the defense will hold and they'll bail me out if this doesn't work. Because there had nothing up until the 4th quarter, he had no reason to believe that they needed to kick field goals, because it was clear that Penn State couldn't effectively move the ball. This will give him some ammo of why you continue to be aggressive. And it's in large part why I picked Oregon to win going into the game. Is I just didn't like James. I don't like James Franklin. I would not. It would drive me nuts if I was a Penn State fan and had to watch the offense success that they have from an individual player perspective, and to see that team every year just be inept offensively. Like, I don't know, Eerik, if you knew this or not, but have you looked at a couple guys that have left Penn State's roster, most notably Bo Pribla, their quarterback? He's like 72% of his passes he's completing. He's thrown for basically 1,000 yards. He has 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. He's looked dynamite. Ole Miss's leading receiver is the Penn State guy that was on their team last season, Harrison Wallace III. 16 catches for 343 yards so far for Ole Miss. Like, it's very clear that players that go to Penn State, Kyron Hudson went there, Pereira went there at receiver. They added the other receiver from Troy. Drew Allard, the 5-star quarterback, has struggled this season just immensely. Like, it's very clear their offense is inept, and they have guys that come in, don't perform to how they should. They have guys that have left, and all of a sudden they magically become elite football players. This is why Dan Lanning does what he did, and why I picked Oregon to win, because Franklin turns into a turtle in these big moments, and they always play safe. And if you don't risk anything, your reward's going to be nothing. And Dan Lanning's willing to risk it.
Yeah, it's got to be really hard to be a Penn State fan in general, because what's Franklin's record now in these top 5 games, top 10 games? I mean, I said it was like
4-17, I believe.
It's just that's hard. I mean, I don't know. And again, he wins every game against lesser teams, and so they're always in positions where it feels like, let's go beat the other top team, and we have a chance to win the conference. We have a chance to play for a national championship. And I don't want to go too far down the Penn State side of things, but I guess maybe the way to bring it back to Oregon and to kind of lean on what you were saying, Matt, is you feel really good about where Dan Lanning's at. I know he had the most frustrating loss maybe in school history at the Rose Bowl last year. There have been worse losses. Frankly, his first game was a more embarrassing loss in some ways in terms of the score, but just the scope last year of like they were 13-0, number 1 seed in the college football playoff. And for the game to be over before halftime, like midway through the second quarter, I understand that game. I understand the collapse in the Civil War in 2022. I understand the frustration of the 3 losses to Washington in a row, all by 3 points. You also have to acknowledge it's ridiculously impressive what he's been able to do the last 2 regular seasons now. And I would stack up like last year's Ohio State game, this win as top 5 wins in program history in the regular season. And this is a really special win. It's going to be, for me, just uniquely special because, again, it was the day my sister's getting married. It was such a weird circumstance. There was a bunch of us just huddled around a cell phone as we were just watching it all come together. I think personally, I was very skeptical that Oregon was going to pull this off when it went to overtime. It felt like Penn State had all the momentum. And then when Oregon got the ball, deferred, I believe, Penn State gets it and just kind of drives it right down the field. It just felt like, gosh, they've got everything going. And I guess to get back to the Penn State part briefly, it felt weird with the success they had running that they throw that ball on first down on that second series. And a heck of a play we've already mentioned by Dylan. And if that throw is a little different from Drew, maybe it goes for a big gain and maybe it's not that bad of a play call. But however you want to slice it, they were kind of punking Oregon there at the very end of that game on the ground to a point where I'm guessing a lot of people that are Oregon fans listening to this were going, we were really thankful that they put the ball in Drew Aller's hands rather than Katron Allen or Nick Singleton's hands. Well, you have a response to that, Matt? I have a couple.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I can't believe that they were having success on the ground and they threw the ball. And that goes back to just Penn State's offense. I mean, they got caught with a false start when they had all the momentum. I think Todd Blackledge said it best late in the game. He was like, hey, you have this first-round draft pick quarterback. You are trailing. There's only 3 minutes left in the game. I think I would rather have my quarterback under center than you going wildcat with the quarterback out wide. They just did a lot of weird stuff. I think that goes back to our original point. It'd be really frustrating to be a Penn State fan. You brought up kind of Dan Lanning's just the run Oregon is on. Here's just a couple stats though. 11-0 in Big Ten play all time. Obviously, they haven't lost yet in the regular season. This is the 3rd straight year they've started 5-0. They've won 23 straight games in the regular season now. They've won 9 in a row on the road. They've improved to 15-2 on the road under Dan Lanning. They're 40-6 all time under Dan Lanning in the 4th season, the most wins ever by an Oregon head football coach through 46 games. 15th straight win in the month of September, 15-1 all time, and 7-0 on the road in September. To your point, the only game they've really that lost, the only game that they've really been embarrassed on, and that's the game 1 against Georgia. This is Dan Lanning has passed flying colors before. This we've already been sold on Dan Lanning, but this is just yet another cinder block being built on top of the mountain that. This guy is special. Oregon is going somewhere special as long as he stays here. And the confidence that eventually a national championship eventually will be won by Dan Lanning because every year they're getting better. Every year he finds a way to level up the program. And you and I have covered this team for a really long time, over a decade each. We've followed this team since we were kids. And we kind of grew up in the era where Oregon transitioned from being a bad team to every once in a while they're good to every once in a while they're elite to now they're just consistently good to then now they're consistently elite. It still feels kind of unthinkable that you would tell me at the end of the year, hey, they have 1 starter back on offense, they have 2 starters back on defense. And in game 5, they go in with a bunch of freshmen redshirt freshmen, sophomores, redshirt sophomores and juniors with a handful of seniors, and they go beat the number 3 team in the country in front of 111,000 fans. And it kind of be a convincing win. Like, that doesn't compute for where this program is, and that's just the trajectory Lanning's taken this program.
Wanted to hit on the true freshman part a little bit here. De'Aaron Hill, I think solidifying himself as like, is he RB1? I know.
I asked that in the instant reactions. Like,
it begs to be asked. Noah Whittington was available in this game, was not overly effective. I will say, like, comically, I went to the bathroom after what I thought was the fumble, which felt like a backbreaker, and came back during the speeches and was kind of waiting in the corner. And my cousin gave me like 3 thumbs up like this. I'm going like, what did they turn it back over? And I'm going like, I don't know what happened. And of course, everybody knows the sequence of call overturned, touchdown afterwards. That was pretty significant. And with Mekhi Hughes apparently not making the trip, which my buddy of mine texted me, that's notable. That tells you a lot. It feels like Hill was the most effective running back without question today. I mean, I'm pulling up the stats here. He had 12 touches for 94 yards and a touchdown in this game. That includes a couple of catches. He was the most dynamic playmaker, probably second only to DeCorian. We have to give Gary Bryant Jr. a major shout out for a couple of huge plays in overtime. But it just stands out that arguably the 2 best players in this game, aside from the quarterback on offense, were true freshmen. And I'm with you. I think you have to really question, like, what's the hierarchy at running back? I think the bye week hits Oregon fantastic to get some of this figured out, to get healthy. Didn't seem like, from what I saw, too many injuries took place. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Matt. But Hill's making a case, like, we just talked about it earlier, like, maybe he's more the DeAnthony Thomas gadget guy. Well, but maybe he's more like a Michael James, where he can have that explosiveness, but he can also hit it between the tackles and be a consistent part of, a really consistent, reliable option. I think the hierarchy at running back is fascinating to follow. And for me, maybe prisoner of the moment here, Hill's making a real case to be a guy you have to give 12, 15 touches to, I should say, per week.
Yeah, I wrote about that same topic in the instant reactions. And I'm happy that we feel the same way, because this is a guy that early on it felt like, hey, he's kind of one-dimensional. Got to figure out a way to kind of get him in a one-on-one position in space and hope he makes the guy miss. But this was the first game I felt like where they basically said, hey, Jaden Lamar's trying. He's not really as effective right now as he's been previously. Noah Whittington kind of disappeared for large stretches of the game. Wasn't just playing at all. Mm-hmm. And I think they just kind of like, let's the young kid can run between the tackles. And he was highly effective doing that. And that's the element that I think is going to maybe open the door for this conversation to be a real one, where maybe De'Aaron Hill needs to be getting more carries, taking away from Lamar, maybe taking away from Whittington. Jay Harris did not play in this game. He was used minimally through the first 4 games of the year. DeJuan Riggs did not play in this game. Obviously, you mentioned it. Mekhi Hughes did not make the trip. Your top 3 running backs right now are De'Aaron Hill, Jaden Lamar, Noah Whittington, and Jordan Davidson. Davidson's kind of emerged as your goal line back. He's always going to have that role. And I think De'Aaron Hill is making a strong case that maybe he needs to take carries away from Lamar. Maybe he needs to take carries away from Whittington. And if anything, it's probably going to be a 3-headed monster, them sharing the load instead of one guy getting a little bit more than the other 2.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I think that if we're being honest, we didn't see this coming at all. Like, the running back hierarchy is completely upside down from what I thought, from what I think everyone listening had anticipated. I was confident, Whittington was going to be involved, but I think a lot of us really expected the Mekhi Hughes thing is something that will be asked about during the bye week. That's the right time to ask those questions. Why didn't he travel? I'm sure it was already broached. I don't know. Was it breached today in post game? I haven't had a chance. Bye week, it'll come up. I'm curious on the answers. I'm curious on kind of where things stand there. The good news for Oregon is if this doesn't work out with Mekhi and he ends up somewhere else next year and he does, something similar to like what Chris Hudson did in 2023, where he is with the team for a little bit, red shirts, saves the year and goes somewhere else. You feel awfully good about where this is at, and it's because of these
doesn't
young.
matter.
Yeah, right. You won the game. You just beat Penn State when you didn't. He wasn't even in the right city. He wasn't even in the right time zone. That stands out to me here. One thing that I'll note that was you brought up the fact that Oregon 23 straight regular season wins. Do you know the record? I just pulled it up for most consecutive regular season wins.
20, like 5 or 6?
No, they're not even half. It's 47 by Oklahoma in 1953 to 57. So.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Oregon.
No. It's probably an Oregon record. It gotta be close.
It's got to be close. Maybe the Chip Kelly undefeated season before.
Well, but then they lost to
I don't know.
LSU.
Maybe, yeah,
they lost to LSU the first game of the next year, so there would have to have been something pulled over from the year before. Anyway, I just threw that out there because it just puts to how hard it is to win this many games. Kind of crazy. Even it was like 70 years ago to do that. Any other parting thoughts for you, Matt?
I do have one. It has nothing to do with what happened on the field, but more so I think why Dan Lanning is awesome and why Oregon's fan base loves this guy. He has updated his Instagram story. It's a picture of Dylan Thieneman intercepting the ball with parentheses in it saying day trip, took it to 10, and it's my favorite song, and he's playing Mo Bamba.
Mo Bamba. That's great. He plays into this stuff. And I will say the other part that's refreshing is Dan is not much older than us. He understands social media. He understands the way to make messages. He understands the timing to make these kind of messages. I'm not saying he's like 100% in delivery on every single thing he says, but you're right. You have to appreciate this is a coach who walks the walk, and then he's not afraid to talk afterwards. He's not afraid.
He's not afraid to shit talk. And
no.
Like he was asked about Jerry Mixon's comments about, the comments he made about little brother leading up to the Civil War, and it was like, look, Jerry said it. You talk the talk, now you got to walk the walk. And I think that mentality bleeds over to this team. I don't know if you saw the social media post. I think Ross Dillinger shared it. I think Ross now works for Yahoo. After the interception was made, Oregon's defense, basically as an entire unit, ran directly to the student section of Penn State on the other end of the field. They intercepted the ball on one end, ran all the way across to the other, and basically went right up to the stands and did the, hey, can't hear you, taunting the crowd, all that stuff. Like this team is the confidence that Dan Lanning has instilled in them, whether it's behind closed doors or something like this in public doors where we can see it, that matters. And this team, I had someone that's close to the program tell me before the season started, like, this team is really good. And they're also kind of young enough where they don't realize how good they are.
Mm-hmm.
Too young, too dumb. That's kind of what the phrase you hear a lot. This team is that. I don't think they don't know how good they are. And so they go in every week knowing, oh God, Dan Lanning's going to get mad at us if we're not ready, if we're not dialed in, if we're not focused. And so, because sometimes veteran teams go, we got this. We can turn it on when we need to. And I think this team's going to be special.
Last question before I wrap this, Matt. Where is this week's Ducks versus them going to rank amongst what we've seen over the last 3 years?
Ooh, man. They're pretty good. I had a buddy message me saying a lot of my stress around the game for him and hoping Oregon wins is built around the idea of I want to see what Ducks versus them footage they have.
Right, because we don't – and I'd like to see them release it when they actually lose, which happens so infrequently. But I totally get it. It adds to the appeal here, I think, for people who are following this program. I had a couple people who I was watching the game at the wedding with say, gosh, I can't wait for Thursday when that comes out. And I get it. It's going to be fascinating to hear all the behind-the-scenes stuff, to see more of some of this celebration, to see how what they were doing in that post-game locker room. We were just talking about what they looked like public-facing, like on the field, what they were actually doing back there, it's going to be a treasure trove. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah, that's going to be I don't think it'll surpass Colorado.
Hard to beat.
Hard to beat. Outside of that, though, maybe Ohio State being the other one it doesn't surpass. This might be number 3.
It'll be up there.
It's going to be up there. 100%.
All right, Matt. Just to remind listeners, Matt's going to be on leave here for at least the next 3 or so weeks. Best wishes to him and his family as they're going through a health situation, which I know we addressed a couple of days ago, but just wanted to give a reminder. Myself and John Evans, our student reporter, and Jackson Moore will be doing some content on the podcast. It'll probably be a little bit different format, but just wanted to give listeners kind of a sense of what to expect going forward, especially into a bye week. I know John and I are talking about maybe jumping on and doing like a position by position offense defense breakdown at some point next week. Look for that. Maybe Jackson doing some recruiting stuff, but we'll be a little bit different, and it'll be tough not having Matt on the show here for an extended period, but we expect to have him back certainly before the end of the season. And again, best wishes to you and Jamie and all that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hate to kind of end on that note, but we will. Massive win for the Ducks. Awesome time. And gosh, couldn't be a better time to go into a bye week. So for Eerik, Skopil, and Matt Prehm, wrapping up this episode. Talk to you later, folks.